Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy this morning to be sharing with you on this important topic, which is the impact of childhood interaction and caring relationship. Today we are just going to talk about this in more detail and what you can do as a caregiver or parent. So in terms of what we'll be trying to cover today will be firstly understanding what is quality interactions, as well as what will define a caring relationship. And secondly, to go into the details of what the child's brain is like when they have good interactions. And thirdly, introducing the concept of serve and return, as well as understanding how this can impact in relationships with the child. And fourthly, I would like to also touch on some of the developmental stages and also what you can do to support your child in this particular, in various developmental stages. So firstly, let's talk about quality interaction and caring relationship. So what exactly is quality interaction as well as caring relationship? There are basically three components to it. Joint engagement, whereby both the parent and the child is equally engaged in the activity. And then familiar routine is whereby you and your child actually do certain things together that you do it on a day-to-day basis, such as having meals together, bedtime routines, as well as engaging in certain play activities. And thirdly, will be feeling connected when you're doing these routines and these activities. So when you see that a parent and child actually connect during this interaction, what it really means is that they enjoy being together. They also enjoy taking turns when they're doing the activity, and they also participate equally. So being connected is very important because it motivates the child to actually stay in the interaction a bit longer and then give them more opportunities to learn from their parent. So caring relationship is so essential that we often see in a lot of research being described as being at the heart of early brain development. So there are four main concepts around this. Firstly is understanding that relationship that the child experiences every day and the environment that they are in, whereby those relationships will play out every single time. And these are actually the building blocks of the brain. So the child's experiences in the relationship could be at home or in the school, in a childcare setting. And this actually helps them establish the initial stages of how their brain should function. Oftentimes, the information that they gather from this relationship also allow them to form certain expectations as to how the caregivers will treat them and how they should respond. And as these expectations are being strengthened through the repeated experiences and routine, it actually gives them an initial idea of how their social and emotional world should be like and how they should respond accordingly. So in essence, a young child tends to develop and function well when they are being given care in a safe and interesting and very intimate setting where they can establish relationships that are both secure and trusting with these caregivers who are very responsive to their needs and interests. So the second section that we are going to talk about will be on the child's brain. So naturally, we need to understand the child's brain and how it functions so that we can cater our interaction with them accordingly. Well, a child's brain is truly very unique and very wonderful at the same time, because it's quite contrary that the brain is actually both vulnerable as well as competent at the same time. So the vulnerability of a child's brain comes from the fact that it's very dependent on the adult for physical survival, like providing them with food, a place to stay, and also emotional security, whereby care is being provided in an individualized manner, and the adult providing the safe base for learning and helping them with self-regulation, as well as modeling, mentoring, all those appropriate social behavior, giving them information about how the world functions, as well as the rules for it. But we also know that the child's brain is very, has a lot of plasticity. It's very competent because it's curious, and the child is often inherently motivated to start learning by themselves. Children are known to be great imitators. They can also interpret what you say and even what you do, even though words are not spoken. They can integrate the information around them, and they also are great inventors, explorers, communicator, even before they start talking. And they often seek to actually build relationship with people around them. So now we understand that the brain is very, both vulnerable and competent. What we must realize is that young child do experience and develop themselves in this environment of relationship. And the most ideal situation is that there is a growth promoting relationship whereby the child will interact with this adult with this give and take kind of situation, meaning there will be a child gives a response, and then the adult will give an individualized experience to the child in return. So basically, this relationship itself with this adult can virtually affect all aspects of their development, from the way the intellectual function is, to the social aspect of their brain, the emotional, even the physical development of this child, the behavioral aspect as well as the moral aspect. So a loving and nurturing relationship is so extremely important for the child's development. These kind of relationships will allow the child to express themselves, and what in return that the child receives is very important because it tells the child what the world is like and how to behave. So the concept of serve and return is pretty much like a child and a parent playing a game of tennis. Like what I was saying, the child does an action and then the parent will return back, right? The ball, essentially the response. So when you respond appropriately, you are actually making your child feel secure and safe. And then you, in return, build a very strong relationship, a secure attachment between you and your child. So when the child feels safe and attached to you, then the child is more likely to have confidence to explore their world. So in terms of safe and return is super important, which is why I've wanted to cover it in our brief session this morning. And then we need to understand what is the impact of caring relationship, the importance of it. So serve and return, as I was saying, is almost like a game of tennis. So this kind of interaction can help to build and strengthen the brain architecture, and then it creates a relationship in which the baby's experience can be reaffirmed and then new abilities can be nurtured. So relationship acts as the active ingredient of the environment's influence on healthy human development, right? So it also helps to the child to form insight into how other people are feeling, what are their needs and what are their thoughts. It also provides the foundation for the child to learn cooperative interaction with others. It could be their peers or the adults around them, and then also allow them to gradually develop an emerging conscience. So the key message here is we do encourage all parents and caregivers who have a young child to relay early and relay often. You can start as early as when the child is a newborn, right? And caregivers must remember to do it often and remember to do it in the appropriate manner. And why is this important? So basically the impact of having this kind of quality interaction and caring relationship is that firstly, it helps the child to build self-confidence. It will ensure a sound mental health because of the secure attachment that is being built from early years. Give the child motivation to learn, and then in return, allow good school achievement, as well as some behavioral changes such as regulating themselves and controlling aggressive impulses. It also helps the child to develop an insight on how to resolve certain conflict and to build intimate relationship as well as friendships, and eventually become a successful parent themselves. So the last section that we're going to talk about is the various developmental stages, and also what young parents and caregivers can do to support our children with an environment of caring relationship. There are essentially 4 big developmental stages that I'll try to touch on, and I'll only emphasize on 3 today. So in terms of development, there are 4 big stages. The first one will be the prenatal, even the pre-conception phase. We won't be touching a lot on this. This is about mom being pregnant and all the toxic influences that the mother can experience during pregnancy. What we'll be talking about is from birth onwards. So there are 3 areas: the attachment period, the exploration period, and then lastly, the self-definition period. So a child from birth to 9 months, they are in this attachment period. Why do we say attachment? That's because they are genetically built to actually seek attachment, to form and strengthen secure connections with their caregivers. Their main dominant activity is actually to react to the caregivers around them, as well as learn how to create a working model on how to engage other people. And the kind of care that they receive during this first 9 months of their life actually affect the quality of attachment that they form with their caregivers. It helps the child develop this emotional construct of what their world will be like. Essentially, when you have a child who is very young, like less than 9 months, what you should do is to try to understand that these babies are in high need for caregivers to be very sensitive to them in terms of the messages that they send out, whether is it a cry or a smile, right? And be very timely in responding, especially when they send out messages of distress. So a baby needs to be cuddled and carried, okay? And that's also why a lot of times caregivers can be very stressed out when their young ones cry and you don't understand, right? And with time, we become more and more accurate in reading their cues. So there are parents who start to understand, a short cry means this, a longer cry means something else. So we do know that babies can't be overstimulated as well. So when you know your baby very well, there are times when you know that your baby just could be a bit too overstimulated, and you have to tone back on the kind of activities that you're engaging your baby with. So for the 7 and 18 months old, for caregivers, what you can do is to understand that besides the gross motor skills increasing and developing, their communication and language skills are also increasing. So we need to learn to pay attention to what kind of communication signals we are sending out to our child, how it's being said, as well as what the child understands. And you also need to know that we cannot be too overprotective. Understand that the child is learning to explore and also building a primitive sense of themselves, and try to consider what kind of impact you will send out when you act on a certain kind of behavior that the child is demonstrating to you, what kind of emotions that you are displaying to the child, or what kind of stories you're telling the child can actually impact how the child perceive him or herself, as well as the actions that he chooses to do. We come to the third stage. This is the exciting stage, the 18 to the 36-month-old stage. A sense of self is actually increasingly developing. They are very much aware that they are separate from their caregivers as well as their peer. So they start to become more self-conscious of what kind of emotions they have, as well as what kind of choices they can make. They are also more sensitive to how people may see them, may judge them, and they can feel easily ashamed and embarrassed when people criticize their behavior or appearances. This is also when they start to develop a conscience as well. So this self-definition stage is very exciting because there's an explosion of development, both in the intellectual component, the language, the motor skills, and even the executive function, which means the working memory of the child, mental flexibility, their ability to self-control. And they also have increasing ability to learn to explore about their environment and to try to navigate some conflicts with their peers or even the adults. This is when you find that a child may often say no to a lot of things. They want to make choices, and then with this kind of choice will come responsibility tension. So there will be some power struggle between the parent and the child. So for the 18 and 36-month-old child, how you react will affect how the child sees their own rights as well as other people's rights. And hence the interaction between the caregivers and peers are so important. So what they experience on a daily basis will help them form expectation of how they should be behaving, and will also teach them what are the moral and the ethical codes and how to control their emotions, by observing how other children behave and also how the adult behave. So there should be a lot of careful supervision and guidance with their increasing independence, and also how we behave and care for the child will determine what kind of guidance we should give to the child. So there are three important things that you should do for this age group where they are, increasingly independent. In other words, this self-definition stage. We should try to continue to provide predictable routines in what will be a clearly well-defined environment and a safe environment, and try to give very respectful responses to some of their questions, as well as certain behavior, and be consistent with the way you guide them to do the right things. Okay, and this will strengthen their self-regulation ability and help them develop their executive functions. So we've come to almost the end of my presentation today. I hope that I've given you a brief overview of why caring relationship and quality interaction is so important, as we know that they are really the essence of brain development in our young child, and how the caring relationship that you have with your child can affect so many aspects of their development, right from the time that they are a newborn. So you can influence how your child's intellectual ability, social, emotional, physical, and even behavioral development from the very beginning where you start to interact with your child. And always remember to relay, in other words, interact early with your child, and do it very often in a consistent and individualized fashion. And the golden period we know now is the first 3 years of the child's life. I thank you very much for your attention. I hope you enjoy the rest of the presentation this morning.